area, the elites headed for the exits, governments and institutions hoarding gold while telling the public don't own it. Gerald Celente, what do you make of the situation on the Greek islands?
It's a big one. Even though Greece's GDP is a fraction of the Eurogroup's GDP, it still means a lot because there's a lot of discontent. I just got back from Europe last Wednesday, and there's a lot of discontent going around about what their governments are doing to the people. And the so-called austerity measures, which actually come down to robbing you of your pensions, raising taxes, selling off valuable public assets to your buddies at discount rates, and increasing the retirement age till after you die. So what this is really bringing about, it's empowering other nations such as Italy and Spain and Portugal that have been put under the yoke of repression, financial repression, by the European Monetary Union. So this is really big. And, you know, Alex, I was going back over some information that we wrote in the past. And this is from a Trends journal. Oh, this was the winter of 2012. So it's actually the December 2011. And what they were doing back then is the Greek Prime Minister, Papandreou, had called for, you ready for this? A referendum on the austerity measures. People forgot that. I forgot that. And you know what happened? They got pressure from the European Union to call it off. So they did, because the guy was obviously a coward. So this is very big what happened. And whether or not they voted yes or no really makes no difference. The difference is that the people have taken the future into their own hands, whereby they weren't going to be dictated to be robbed more from the International Mafia Federation, better known as the IMF, and the World Bank and the hedge funds. Who made this baloney up that if banks and hedge funds and private equity groups and what they love to call investors, as adults call gamblers, made bad bets, and we, the people, have to pay them off? They lost their money. This is bankers' money that was lost. Why are they putting the onus on the people to pay them off? I'll tell you why. Because it's called fascism, the merger of state and corporate powers. Nothing has changed, Alex, since the days of Jesus Christ chasing the money changers out of the temple. They just have official names now. They're Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan's Chase. They're Royal Bank of Scotland. They're Societe Generale. The money changers have names. And then when you look at the scam going on, who's the guy that runs the European Central Bank? Couldn't be Mario Draghi, former vice chairman of the Goldman Sachs gang of the European division. Who's the guy they put up as a so-called technocrat in Greece that was going to straighten us all out 2 years ago? Oh, yeah, another guy, Papademos. Hey, wasn't he with the Goldman Sachs gang too? And the rest of the group? Of course he was. So all this is, it's a banking takeover, and they want to paint it in another color to make it seem what it isn't.
Well, I can't say it any better, Gerald, than what you just broke down. I would expect now to see the global mafia tear Greece to pieces and blame their economic collapse further into degradation on the Greek people. I know that areas of Latin America, like Argentina, that were pegged to the dollar and bought into globalism, went from one of the wealthiest countries in the hemisphere to one of the poorest in just a decade. I know you've traveled down there to see it for yourself, but it's a total transformation. These globalists will suck countries dry. They will create squalor. They will consolidate control. And they'll call it free market and scapegoat capitalism while they're at it. So I think it's key that Greece does not pay the taxes and grow their own food, as they're starting to do, and just totally break with the system. I think that the establishment is going to push so far that whether it's Greece or some other country, they're going to force people to go back to nationalism and back to sovereignty and back to the interest of the people.
You summed it up perfectly. And that's, by the way, I read that article on InfoWars about the U.S. preparing for a coup, you know, to really destabilize this area because they made we the people over there, you know, decided what they wanted, and that you can't have any of that. So you're exactly right. What this is doing, it's showing the people that they don't need the European Central Bank, Brussels, as the mafia controlling them. Their destiny is in their own hands. Look, they have about $350 billion in debt. You saw the GDP of Greece decline some 30% since this whole austerity measure thing began. And as you point out, who do they blame? Let's blame the people because they got social benefits and they're living off the government. They're not talking about the dirty deals that are made. Hey, you know what they haven't cut, Alex? The defense budget. Oh, yeah, that's right. The same thing like that guy, what's his name over there, did over in Wisconsin. That guy with the big mouth and the little mind. He's running for president? Walker, that's it. Scott Walker. Yeah, we're going to get rid of all those unions, those public unions, but we're not going to touch the police. Same deal, man. You know, it's one big group, and they want the military in control to put down the people when they get out of line. And that's what they're doing there.
Stay there. Gerald Celente is our guest. One thing is clear. There are big problems inside the world government. We're going to break it down and take your phone calls straight ahead. We're also going to look at campaign 2016. Chris Christie blames Rand Paul for any terror attacks that come when Rand Paul fought against arming al-Qaeda. Gerald Celente is our guest. I want to go to Rich and Joe and others that are patiently holding. Joe first. But after we take some calls, we're going to get back into other news. Gerald, what else are you looking at on your radar screen of importance? We see the Puerto Rico governor coming out last week and saying they're insolvent. Well, pretty much most counties and cities are insolvent. But we're told by the leader of the free world that raising our debt doesn't raise our debt. We don't know when all this is going to unravel, but it looks like we're getting closer to it. What's going to happen when it unravels?
Well, what is going to happen is you're going to start seeing panic in the streets. Take what's going on in Greece. How could any thinking human being that's living in that country have left money in the bank knowing that this was going to happen? So what you mentioned, Puerto Rico, they're doing the same thing. How about this? People have lost their jobs. They have a huge unemployment. What, about 40% of the people are, on some form of welfare? I got it. Let's raise taxes on the people. That's what they just did. They all do these stupid things. And then you start putting all the pieces together, what's going on around the world. And one of you just asked me what else is on our radar. How about China? That's basically out of the news. The markets there are down some 30% after having gone up, about over 100% in 12 months, down 30% since the middle of June. So now, here's what's going on. When people say, are the markets rigged? Of course they are, but they love to use that proper language to make it seem as though we're all so stupid because it's white shoe boy talk. This is the headline of today's Financial Times. Here it is. China pumps liquidity into markets in fresh attempt to halt share sell-off. Remember, this is the big story. Pump liquidity? How about rigging the markets? Could anybody say that? Aren't markets supposed to take their natural course? Of course not. Not when you have to keep the Ponzi scheme going.
Gerald, I remember 10 years ago, we'd have Ron Paul on talking about the plunge protection team and markets being rigged, and people didn't believe us. Now they admit the currencies are rigged every day. the interest rates are rigged, the stock market's rigged, and I love how they just hide it in plain view like it's a good thing now, and they say we're going to take money out of your private bank account and give it to shadowy groups. That's a haircut. Again, white shoeboy language.
Yeah, and you mentioned what Ron Paul said, and this isn't conspiracy theory. These guys get convicted, not charged, convicted of felonies for rigging the LIBOR rate, the interest rates, and the Forex market, the currency markets. They're convicted, and not one person goes to jail. So that's what it is. They're rigging the markets. It's in front of everybody's eyes. The Chinese are proudly announcing it. If you go to Global Times, one of their biggest news outlets, they're saying that how they're going to, create stability in the markets. You're rigging the markets. And by the way, the Chinese market is very important because a lot of this money are the so-called retail investors. These are people that are gambling, that don't know what they're doing. And they have a huge amount of margin calls. Now you add up what's going on. I mentioned to you how much the market has gone up in China over the last year, over 100%. That was also equivalent to about 1.3% of add-on to their GDP. So they're actually in looking at declines way beyond what they're reporting. So when you put all this together, what's going on in Europe, what's going on in China, what's going on in Brazil is in a recession. You're looking at destabilization in places like now that's not making the news in America.
The globe is on fire, and the collapse clearly has been ongoing and is speeding up right now. If China's stock market starts tanking, which headlines say it's begun, you can guarantee that's going to hit our markets. I want to get your take on what you think's next. Gerald Celente, the trends forecaster, and your phone calls. I promise when we come back, we're going right to Joe and Rich and Wildman and Jeff and Joshua and everybody straight ahead. I'm Alex Jones. Infowars.com and prisonplanet.com are the websites, and we'll put Gerald's on screen as well when we come back. Stay with us. Key information straight ahead. Trendsresearch.com is his website. Gerald Celente is our guest. We're going to take your phone calls here in just a moment. When I get up on air and start apologizing for being in a bad mood, it's because I'm in such a bad mood, I feel like you can feel it. And in truth, I talk to the crew and others, they go, everything's fine. You can stop apologizing. But I just am physically panicking almost because I know history and I know where this is going. And I've also seen things in my own personal life that I really don't want to see repeated. And then I realize we don't just have bad management, we have really evil management that could cause a nuclear war or anything else for that matter. And yes, the world's waking up to a certain extent, but at the same time, a lot of people are so dumbed down they can't even tell you what the Declaration of Independence is or what July 4th stands for. And that fundamentally gets me down. I believe the people are the answer, but also the population tuning into mainstream media is not the answer. But we know with austerity, people tend to start really waking up. Humanity is amazing. We have unlimited potential. But if we continue to follow the modern systems of globalism, we have no future.